Welcome to Tony Martignetti Nonprofit Radio, coverage of the NextGen Charity Conference 2011. We're in downtown Manhattan at the Tribeca Performing Arts Center, and my guest now is Neil Strauss. Welcome, Neil.
Thanks for having me on, Tony.
My pleasure. Neil Strauss is the author of The Game and a writer with Rolling Stone. Why don't you talk about The Game, sort of a provocative history behind that, your book?
Yeah, it was a book that it's been a very funny kind of cult following type of book. But basically I was just a guy like millions of other guys with fears and insecurities about talking to women, and the guy was always in the friend zone. And I had this book editor who found this kind of secret community online of guys trading tips and ideas to meet women and being very successful at it, despite having no money, looks, or fame, and felt perfect for me. And literally I spent kind of 2 years completely immersed in this world. I didn't originally do it for a book. I originally just did it so I would no longer be in friend zone with women I liked. And it was such a bizarre world, and the ideas they had were so counterintuitive and almost revolutionary in comparison with anything I'd ever read before or tried to do, that I ended up writing this book about it.
Okay. I wasn't going to go into detail, but since you said they were counter-revolutionary and so out of sync with everything you'd heard, in what respects? Well, just a couple of ways that it was so different than what you would have expected.
I guess the biggest idea, and it's something I talked about today in the conference, was the idea of disqualification. The idea of saying that I don't want to be with you and I'm not that interested is actually going to get someone more interested than saying I'm interested and I want to be with you in the courtship period. And I think that's true for anything. That whole idea, I don't want to be part of any club that wants to have me as a member.
Yeah. All right. And you can read more in Neil's book, The Game. But we're going to talk about some of the tips from the world of seduction,
right.
The art of seduction, that apply to charities. And you have some pretty insightful ideas. Before we get to the charity, though, the ideas that you have are interesting to federal agencies. You mentioned the FBI when you were on stage. So what is it? Why are law enforcement agencies as interested in your work and the book as charities ought to be?
I mean, they're transferable to anything. The only difference is the close is obviously different for law enforcement. Maybe that's getting a informant to give over information about someone they're working with, or extracting a confession, or getting someone to turn over secrets to the United States. Or for a salesperson, the close is getting that sale. For a charity, the close is getting that donation. For a political campaign, the close is getting someone elected. But the steps involved on the way to it are all the exact same.
Okay, I'm not sure people would recognize that they'd be generally applicable. And
I think it is, because it really is about social skills, about social understanding and social intelligence, and really to do anything in life, we need to have some understanding of basic social human behavior.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about some of the tips that you have that you think relate most closely to work in charities.
Yeah, I think the biggest point, and I'll make the one-to-one comparisons with the game because maybe that's my basis of knowledge. But also, having been a donor, never having raised funds, but having been a donor, I understand and see where people go wrong, or even a potential donor that maybe didn't give because I was approached wrong.
Okay.
And I mean, I think among the most important things are the same mistake that a guy makes maybe with women is the same mistake that nonprofits make with people who could be potential donors, which is they open with the close. They open right away with saying what they want from someone.
Probably a donation.
Right, probably a donation.
Right.
And it works. In the world of the game, it's called, there's direct game and indirect game. Direct game is saying, I want a donation, and someone says, oh great, I love the work you do, and here's a donation. Right? Direct game in a bar or something is saying, I want to go home with you, and someone says, oh great, I'm attracted, I'm free tonight, let's go home.
Right.
And it's great if they're already attracted. But what about the people who don't yet know about the work you're doing? What about the people which I really believe is most of the human race, that can at least put a roof over their head and put food in their stomachs, with any small amount of discretionary income, who want to give back and want to do something, but they don't know you, they don't know what you're doing, they don't really know how to do it, they have trust issues. Believe me, the first time I gave money, I had a lot of fear around where that money was going to and if it was going to be used usefully, because it's the first time I did it. And so with those people, you have to take the indirect approach, which is building a relationship, building trust, building all these things before you put your hand out. And if you do it right, your prospective donor is the one giving the close. They're the one suggesting, I want to give money to you, versus you having to ask.
Yeah, and that's a true grand slam when the donor reaches that conclusion on their own,
Right.
without being asked.
Right, and it's done, and it's done through a series of steps that I discussed today, which is that you're starting the conversation. Second step, and we won't go over in detail like I did on stage, but really quickly, is you're demonstrating value. You're saying why what you're doing matters, why it's important, even why you as a person, because if you're making a one-on-one connection with a major donor, why you as a person are interesting. And what's important is, I think a lot of people, you're very passionate about what they're doing. They know it's good for the world, and it's in many cases volunteering their own time to do it, and then you assume that everyone's supposed to help you and not understanding their needs, and thinking instead about trying to take value from someone, trying to give them value. Yeah. I think the idea is that even though they're giving you a donation, what can you give to them? I always quote George Clooney, who in acting auditions said, auditions changed for me the moment I stopped asking what can they do for me and started thinking what can I do for them. Okay.
So that's ideas for the open, and generally your advice, don't open with the close. And
right.
What else can you share with us about?
I think
that carries over.
Sure. I mean, I think the other important thing, and this has been my experience, is managing the relationship afterward. I feel like most of my experiences with charities and nonprofits have felt like one-night stands. Okay. In the sense that there was a nice courtship, I put out, and then I didn't get a call back afterward. Yeah. All right. And I would have loved to have kept giving. I would have loved to have created a relationship with something and keep giving and know that I'm at least a small part of something that's growing and moving towards a goal that I feel positive about. And what happened, I remember after when I did the game, and I feel like it is a common idea that if one succeeds, one gives something back to the community. And so I thought, well, where's an appropriate place to make some donations, having written this book for guys? I thought maybe I'll do, so I made a donation to a women's shelter and gave them the funds to build a new roof. Mm-hmm. And I gave to an AIDS fund. And with the AIDS fund, I just got added to a mailing list and then hit up for money every year. Yeah. And with the women's shelter, I just never heard from them again. And it felt like if they had managed those relationships, those just could have been the charities that I gave to. I mean, obviously, I found new ones each year, and there are a few ones like Donors Choose, where you get your and I'm sure you talk about it. You listeners know them, and I obviously started need to explain it. But with that, it was almost nice and unexpected after all these one-night stands to get that the little packet from the kids of all their drawings, even though that donation was actually smaller than the ones they made to these other places. Yeah. Okay. Is there one thing you want to leave us with? Yeah, let me think. Yeah, I think the one thing that I want to leave you with is this thought, which is that I want to talk about logic and emotion in donors really quickly, which is that you make the logic when you're appealing to the logical mind is to overcome objections and fears, but the emotional part is where it really counts. And I think to remember that, to me, and again, I'm just talking from my experience, but I think it's that there's an emotional fulfillment, and there's an emotion that in giving there's a lot of studies on altruism, but the idea that if you can help them afterward feel that emotional satisfaction, like they've done something, fulfilling whatever their value is by which they gave, they will keep on giving. And I don't know if we mentioned it earlier, did we? That 60%, I think in 2010.
You said it on stage, but not here. Yeah, please, go ahead.
60% of donors stop giving to a charity. So there's so much fun in getting new donors, but anyone in marketing or business knows your best customers are the ones you already have. Yeah,
quite a bit less time and resources go into finding some, retaining existing donors.
And they'll tell their friends, and it spreads really nicely. And I think the many nonprofits that do that and do a good job of that.
Neil Strauss is the author of The Game, and he's a writer for the Wall. Are you with the Wall Street Journal?
I do write for the Wall Street Journal sometimes.
Oh, excellent! Yeah. For the Wall Street Journal, and he's also a writer for Rolling Stone. And Neil, thank you very much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me on, Tony.
It's been a privilege. This is Tony Martignetti, nonprofit radio coverage of the NextGen Charity Conference 2011.